Let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever finished a project for a client, delivered exactly what you thought they asked for, and they responded with something like, hmm, it's not exactly what I was expecting, or that's not what I was looking for? You can actually feel the room change. Now, all of a sudden, everyone went from excitement, anticipation, to frustrated. The client feels misunderstood. You feel like you delivered exactly what was requested, and yet, what's very interesting is that no one was actually wrong. What you're experiencing is something called expectation drift. It's probably the most common trust leak that I see in client work. And today we're going to break down what exactly is expectation drift, why it happens so often, how it quietly erodes trust, and the one simple diagnostic question that prevents it. Welcome back to the Trust Leaks podcast. I'm Sandra Martini, and if you're new here, this show explores the invisible operational problems that quietly erode trust inside businesses. Because when trust breaks down, the systems often look like something else: stalled decisions, frustrated clients, team tension, or projects that suddenly go sideways. Clients that you think had a great experience but don't refer. They just kind of vanish when something is done. Underneath all of those symptoms, and they are symptoms, are what I call trust leaks. In the previous episode, we introduced the Trust Leaks Diagnostic, which evaluates 6 operational areas where trust most commonly breaks down. They are expectation leaks, ownership leaks, communication leaks, process leaks, follow through leaks, and number 6, experience leaks. Trust leaks tend to show up in 2 different phases of work. The first is alignment. Alignment is where your expectations, ownership, and communication get defined. The second is execution, where process, follow through, and the client experience either reinforce trust or slowly erode it. Today's episode, we're starting with the first category, expectation drift. What exactly is expectation drift? Well, it happens when 2 people believe they agreed on the same outcome. However, they actually define success differently in their own minds or their own teams. Nothing malicious happened, nothing dishonest happened, yet somewhere along the way, the expectations slowly drifted apart. The problem is that nobody notices this until the results show up. And yet you see this everywhere in business. A client thinks they purchased one level of service. The team believes that they committed to something different. A leader assumes a deliverable will be finished by Friday. The team believes Friday was just a checkpoint. A consultant thinks they're responsible for strategy. The client believes that that consultant is also responsible for some implementation. Everyone moves forward believing they're aligned until the moment when expectations collide. That collision is expectation drift. And I just had a friend who experienced this yesterday at a local restaurant. Friend went in, ordered a chicken bacon ranch wrap. Simple. And in his mind, this wrap was going to come warm. Um, and that's what he was looking for. It was a cold, horrible day here. So he's looking for a nice, warm lunch wrap. What arrives is something very, very cold. No dipping sauce, no nothing, and just out of the fridge into the container, cold wrap. Before he's even actually had a chance to decide whether he likes it or not, he is unhappy because his expectations weren't met. And he went back and looked at the menu to see if he messed up, and the menu didn't specify. There was no clarity about whether this was warm or cold, so there was room for ambiguity. That was an expectation drift in a restaurant. So you can see that it happens and can happen anywhere and everywhere. Now, the next question is, why does it happen? Well, it usually comes from one of 3 sources. First, assumptions replacing clarity, like in the case with the wrap. When people believe something is obvious, they don't define it, they don't ask for clarification. Second, vague definitions of done, and this is a big one. Words like strategy, support, implementation, ongoing, they sound clear, yet they mean very different things to different people, and that maybe even different things to different people in the same team. And the third is speed. In growing businesses, conversations move quickly, projects start quickly, teams assume alignment instead of verifying it. Expectation drift almost always hides inside that speed. So we want to slow down and make sure, okay, have we dotted the I's? Have we crossed the T's? Are we all in alignment? People ask, well, why is this a trust leak? Well, at first, expectation drift you might think is a communication issue. However, over time, it becomes a trust issue. When expectations drift apart, the result feels personal. The client may think they should have known what I meant. The team thinks that's not what we agreed to. Now, everyone is interpreting the outcome through this trust lens. The clients wonder if the company overpromised. The team wonders if the client is changing the rules. You start to hear things like scope creep. When the client was like, no, there's no creep. This is exactly what I was expecting to have. The real issue is neither of these, though. The real issue is that the expectations were never anchored clearly in the first place. So now that you know it's everywhere, now that you know it happens, big teams, small teams, inside businesses, inside restaurants, inside even with your children, where you think clean your room means keep the room clean, suitable for someone to walk in, and your child hears, oh, when they say to clean my room, I need to go clean my room. So expectation drift happens everywhere. Where does it show up the most, though? It tends to show up in very predictable places, scope discussions. The client assumes certain services are included, the teams assume they are not. This happens most often when you're dealing with a flat fee. So if I'm paying X amount per month for service for these services, I may think that these services are defined as bing, 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 and the vendor thinks it's bing, bing, or bing, bing, bing. And all of a sudden, they're thinking it's scope creep. I'm saying, no, that was in there all the time because it was never truly defined. There's some ambiguity. Timeline expectations. Clients expect speed. Teams expect process. And another popular one is communication frequency. Clients expect proactive updates. They want to know what's going on when we had a meeting, what did we decide, what are we doing? The team, the provider, on the other hand, they expect clients to reach out when needed. So they're thinking, oh, client's quiet, all's good. Meanwhile, clients over here going, where's an update? Waiting for an update. Why don't I have an update? And then if they feel they need to ask for the update, all of a sudden it's another little tick and then, are they doing what they should be doing? Can I trust them? Yet another way is success definitions. The client might measure success one way, the provider measures it another way. We'll just go back to my friend's restaurant experience. The restaurant, you wanted a chicken bacon ranch wrap. I delivered a chicken bacon wrap ranch. Customer goes, I was expecting this really nice and warm chicken bacon ranch wrap, and instead I got this ice cold thing fresh out of the fridge when it's freezing outside, and that's not what I was looking for. Okay, neither one of them are wrong. It was all a matter of expectations. So, whether you're a small founder run business or a larger agency, every one of these gaps creates the opportunity for expectations to drift apart. That leads us into the diagnostic question. That is a very simple way to help prevent expectation drift. You just ask this one question early and you ask it often. You ready? What does done look like? What is done? When both sides describe what done means, several things become clear very, very quickly. What the deliverable is, what the timeline is, what success looks like, what is included, and just as importantly, what is not included. That one question collapses a huge amount of hidden ambiguity. And one of the things I like to do is say, okay, you define done, I'll define done, and then let's see where we are. I was in a meeting earlier today and it was a very lively discussion within a client's team. And one of the team members was saying A, B, and C. Another one was saying, yes, but when we do B, D, and F. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay. So I said, okay, let's just pause, everybody. Let's step back for a second. And what exactly is the end goal? When we say, yes, we finished, we crossed that finish line, what does that mean? And instantly it was clear because team member A and team member B had very different definitions of what the finish line was. Okay, let's get agreement on the finish line and then we can come back to this conversation. So that one question of what does done look like, just it answers so much. As mentioned, it collapses this huge amount of ambiguity, and ambiguity is where expectation drift lives. So before we wrap up, trust leak to watch for this week, obviously, is expectation drift. Expectation drift happens when two people, two teams, two businesses agreed on the same outcome, but they never actually defined success the same way. They never actually asked, did we clearly define what done looks like? If the answer is no, nope, they never did that, then expectation drift is already in motion. You see, expectation drift is one of the earliest signals that trust may begin to erode inside a company, inside a relationship, a partnership. And while no one intended to break trust, because expectations were never anchored, trust almost always gets broken. Okay, those expectations need to be anchored in order to protect the trust. So if you're noticing delays, confusion, or friction inside projects that should be straightforward, expectation drift may already be happening in your business, partnership, contract, etc. The good news is that once you can see that this is happening, it becomes much easier to fix. If you'd like to evaluate where trust may be breaking down in your own organization, you can take the Trust Leaks diagnostic at trustleaks.com. So trust, Leaks, leaks.com. And if this episode helped clarify something that you're seeing in your own business or with your own relationships and projects, be sure to follow the Trust Leaks podcast so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.